What's up? My name is Ben, and today we're going to be assassinating.
We're gonna stop right. We're not gonna be assassinating anyone. Please do not arrest us, feds. All right. Well, what are we here to talk about today? We're here to talk about 2014's X-Men: Days of Future Past. A little background on this one. I hadn't seen it, but I had heard a lot of people actually, tell me this was not only their favorite X-Men movie, but like one of their favorite movies of all time. So there was a lot of hype building up to this movie, and of all the X-Men movies, this is the one I was most interested in watching. And I didn't dislike it, but I'm going to say that I'm kind of either I'm over the X-Men franchise at this point, or I just felt very indifferent about what they did with it. Both. I think that it's good. Don't get me wrong. I think it's good. Let's just jump into the plot and story. And I thought that the way they told the story was actually very good. It moved forward at a consistent pace. It was always going somewhere. And the idea of tying Wolverine back into like the old days and combining the new people worked for me pretty well. Basically, it's about the people have created a new robot that is able to find mutants, destroy the mutants, and
it can adapt.
It can adapt to their powers so that they can't be destroyed. But at the same time, it adapted to the point where it started killing like people who would someday have mutant children. So it started just killing everybody. So the mutants are trying to go back in time to stop that from ever happening.
Which, like, it only adapted to some of their powers.
Right.
It adapted to anybody who had the power to, like, shoot weapons.
Well, no one could really kill it, though. Like, if they managed to kill it, it would come back invulnerable to their power.
Yeah, well, I just feel like one of them could create portals, and I just feel like if they created a portal and then half of it got through and then they just cut it off, then... just remove its circuit board or something.
I don't know.
Here's what I'm saying. They weren't creative enough. I think they could have beat these things. But here's the other thing that I'll say. Sending somebody back in time has never, ever made a movie that makes sense.
Yeah.
Time travel just doesn't make sense. And the fact of the matter is that as soon as Wolverine went to the past to fix everything, as soon as he got there, just him being there with his knowledge should have changed the situation that they were in. And then, if he goes back and stops the necessity for him to ever have to time travel, then that would have to therefore mean that he would never have time traveled. Because why would he need to have? It's the grandfather paradox. So, you can't go back in time. If you go back in time... it is not going to make sense. And that is my key issue with this movie.
And I agree with that. It doesn't make a lot of sense. And also, I mean, I didn't really dock it for this because I'm looking at it its own movie. But if you look at the X-Men as a continuity, this movie just trashes everything. It makes no sense with the continuity of the rest of the X-Men movies. Show the fact that randomly Magneto has his powers back and Professor X is alive when... he died in Days of Future Past. What was that one? Last Stand. Mm-hmm. He died in Last Stand. Magneto lost his powers in Last Stand, and then they just totally ignored that movie ever happened. Yeah. That kind of bothered me a little bit because this is a franchise, but like they don't explain it. They don't even like give any reasoning for him being back. So a lot of it doesn't make any sense in that sense. I don't know. I still enjoyed it though, and I didn't have any issues with the way they told the story because I remember us talking about it after we watched it, and like. One of the issues, and I'll get to this later a bit more, is that it feels too long of a movie. Yeah. They should have cut it down, but like when we were trying to talk about it, we're like, where do they cut? Because every scene mattered.
It's a long story.
Every scene built and added, and I think that's actually really good storytelling when you make it so that everything needs to be there and everything flows. So I don't know. I actually did give it a 4.5 out of 5 on a story level. I think that it's really good storytelling. I think that the time travel doesn't make sense, but that's just the nature of using
show
time
business,
travel.
Baby.
That's
show business.
There's nothing you can do about it. If you decide you're going to use time travel, you're just going to ruin sense. It just happens. But I think that other than that little doohickey there, it's a good story. It's a good movie.
Here's the thing. Since that is the whole story. It's so hard to get around. And I think that they thought that by sending his consciousness back instead of sending him back,
Mm-hmm.
that was going to make it make sense because, but like his whole body wasn't there, man.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, whatever you're smoking, pass it this way, son, because I want to understand this movie too. No, okay, the thing is that you're right in that every scene and everything that happens does add and contribute to the rest of the story. And it makes sense, therefore, that I would give it a high rating for that. But I will not. Because there's nothing that you could cut out of the movie to make it make sense doesn't mean that the movie itself makes sense. When Magneto decided to not... I don't remember, when he like infused the machines with metal or whatever else. Cool scene, bro. But why is the future still happening? Why are these people... And I remember they tried some lazy explanation. It's like, but while you're back there, both universes are going to exist and they won't merge until you've completed the task.
Which, yeah, that's pretty dumb.
That's so lazy.
That's pretty dumb.
That's so lazy. You know what would have been sick? Is if anything that he did just automatically changed their whole situation.
Which would wake him up.
Yeah.
Because if they were no longer holding him in that position, then he just wake up.
I like
in
the
a
idea of them
universe.
still holding him in but they're like underwater or something, and it doesn't make
just
any
like trying to
sense.
swim down all of them.
Yeah. I just like the idea of anything that he does just messing with their future, because that's how
more
time
realistic.
travel.
Yeah.
Except I still don't understand why he would be back there in the first place because of the grandfather paradox. My point is 1.5.
1.5.
One
Really?
and a gosh dang half.
Yeah, see, I would disagree. I mean, I know it doesn't make
Or
sense.
did I give it a 2.5?
I mean, originally you did.
We're gonna go ahead and 2.5.
I was gonna say that's really bad. I don't think it deserves that. But anyway, I liked the story. Ben struggles more with the time travel, so there you have it.
Go to sleep while your mind travels back in time. As long as you're back there, past and present will continue to coexist. But once you wake up, whatever you've done will take hold and become history. And for the rest of us, it'll be the only history that we know. It'll be like the last 50 years never happened. In this world, in this war, the only person who will remember it is you.
Hey, listen. This movie had acting and it had characters. And of those things, I was cool with all of it. I don't have any complaints. I think that... here's the deal. Hugh Jackman is so good at the Wolverine that nobody wants to recast him. We are in the pinnacle of recasting everybody and remaking everything. But you haven't seen another Wolverine yet, unless you're watching this probably 3 or 4 years down the line, in which case they probably recasted Wolverine, but forget about that. We're 2022, baby. It's still Hugh Jackman. And let me tell you something. Professor X is still, to this day, as of the last movie that Marvel released, Professor X is still Sir Patrick Stewart.
And whatever the other dude's name is. Because they did replace him, technically.
Yeah, but heck that guy. Sir Patrick Stewart was so good that they recast him, and then they're like, nah, we'll keep him. They had to. He is still... He was in the last Marvel movie, in Into the Multiverse, it was still Sir Patrick Stewart. That's how iconic that actor is for that role. I have no complaints about any of the acting or characters. One thing that I will say, though, is I believe that Kitty Pryde was still in this movie. I don't remember what her mutant name is. The one that sucks powers from people in the first movie and has super ambiguous powers. Rogue. Yeah, Rogue is in the movie, like in the end.
Just in the end, yeah.
But like in the other universe, in the future universe. But I don't know what her powers are anymore because they were way different.
She didn't use any powers.
In the end, she didn't.
Wasn't she the one
sending them back in time?
No, that was somebody completely different.
Oh no! That's the girl who can run through walls.
Maybe. I don't even know.
Yeah, but now she can send people back in time for some reason, and that's a little weird. But I'll take it because I didn't have any issues with the characters or acting. Although I will say I also didn't recognize many of the characters. But that's X-Men.
There's too many.
Just too many.
In fact, when we first turned it on, I recognized that there were people I was supposed to recognize, but I was like, man, it's been too long since I've watched an X-Men movie to remember who any of these guys are. And that's just the nature of having 20,000
show
characters.
business, baby. That's show business.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah. I didn't have any issues with it either. Here's what I will say about the acting characters, and this is kind of the consistent thing I have with pretty much all of them. I think all the actors are good. I think that they all do a really good job, and they've got some big names, big older names at this point. But I just don't think that any of them stand out to me in the same way that like Robert Downey Jr. is an iconic Iron Man at this point. He is Iron Man. I think that
I am Iron Man.
Yeah, exactly. I think that Heath Ledger is a very iconic Joker, and so for that matter, so was Jack Nicholson in his own way. But the thing is,
not Jared Leto.
No. But to be fair, he didn't really get much of a shot at the character.
I don't care.
The point is, the X-Men.
Morbius.
I don't think any of them, and yes, Hugh Jackman is very iconic as the Wolverine because that's the only one we've had, but to me, he's still replaceable.
No.
I think he is.
Don't you dare.
Disney? I think if you got somebody else,
listening.
I could be fine with that. I'd like Hugh Jackman as Wolverine, but I think that you could replace him. So
Yeah.
I gave it a 4.5 on acting characters because just that 1.5 I took off just because they're all great, but none of them are like, I don't know, none of them really secure like the position to me.
It gets a 5 if you ever. Disney, I know you're waiting to copyright this video. In fact, you've probably already demonetized it. Don't you dare take away my boy Hugh Jackman. And if you even think about bringing in Professor X again without being Sir Patrick Stewart better be dead before you take that role away from him. And I mean that. I'm coming
I
for
like
you.
the new guy they got playing for him.
Eric, this is not the time to contribute. I'm coming for you. Don't you dare replace Sir Patrick Stewart. He is so iconic. I also like the new guy.
Mm-hmm.
Don't get me wrong. I'm not taking away any points. I gave it a 5. This is how many I gave it. This many. But Sir Patrick Stewart was made for that role.
He does a really good job.
Or maybe that role was made for him. I don't know. But he looks the part. He feels the part, and he just has the most smoochable forehead. And if you take him away, I'm going to be angered.
You already have angered him just by considering it.
That's right. So don't you dare. Disney?
Professor here. You're pretty strong for a scrawny kid. Come on. Sure there's not a little beast in there?
No.
Come on, beast.
He's not here.
Come on, beastie.
Hey! I said the school's closed. You need to leave. Not until I see the professor.
There's no professor here. I told you that. Look, kid. You and I are going to be good friends.
On the action front, none of it is memorable for me to even. We watched it last week, and I don't really remember any of the action sequences in it. I remember thinking they were fine. I remember Magneto's lifting the baseball stadium and dropping it in the middle of the press conference was pretty sick.
Yeah. Although part of me was like, why?
Yeah, I did wonder that. I'm like, I don't know why he did that. Maybe just to show off his power and make an entrance, which
Fair enough.
he did make an entrance
He definitely
for sure.
did do that for sure.
But I think, and here's the thing. I watched most of the Marvel movies before I watched this movie. In fact, I think I've seen all of them with the exception of the new Doctor Strange Multiverse of Madness. That's maybe the only one I have not seen before I watched this movie. And so I'd already seen Age of Ultron, right? And so Age of Ultron is essentially a bunch of robots attacking superheroes, and that's essentially what this one is. And so because I'd already seen Age of Ultron, and I didn't really care for that action in that one either, this didn't really do much for me to see a bunch of robots attacking mutants, which was the majority of the action. Yeah, I can't. Do you think of any like specific action sequence in that movie that really stood out? Because I can't even think of what they were anymore.
So, I mean, there's the first couple of shots. Like the first scenes
Where they're being
in the
attacked.
future. Yeah.
Yeah.
Those are the main things. And then there's when Wolverine wakes up in bed with somebody who's apparently supposed to be protecting, and they shoot at him a couple of times.
Wizard.
Yeah, it was kind of sick. And then he whips out his bone claws. And every time I think of bone claws, I think of Bonesaw from
Spider-Man.
Yeah. Bonesaw. You're in the ring with me for 3 minutes. I don't know. Anyway, listen, there's a couple of other action sequences. Oh, they broke my boy Magneto out of prison.
They did. Oh, yeah, that's a good point.
That's a great
the
scene.
Quicksilver. Is his name Quicksilver?
His name is Quicksilver.
Quicksilver stuff where he's running around and just moving things. That was a fun sequence.
Yeah,
for
we
sure.
liked that sequence.
That was a good sequence.
Yeah. Hey, we like that sequence. Actually, I'm just going to go out and say it. If Quicksilver was not in X-Men Apocalypse, that movie would have been entirely unwatchable.
I haven't even seen that one
I
yet.
know you haven't. But here's the deal. Quicksilver, every scene that he's in is always better. And I've said it before and I'll say it again. Sonic the Hedgehog, you stole that scene from Quicksilver, and I'll say it. Quicksilver stole that scene from Over the Hedge. It happened.
It's
We're not gonna-
every time there's a speedster scene, you get that very same action
Mhm.
sequence. But the thing that made this one funny to me was just the way that actor played the part, I think.
Oh,
and,
yeah,
and
he's
the,
excellent.
and the music playing in the
Yeah.
background. Yeah.
Which, like, how fast would that song playing in his ear? You know, because
Right,
the whole
yeah.
song happened in that time period.
Yeah.
And, like, how awful would it be to live in a world where you perceive time that fast?
Oh, yeah.
Where every time somebody is talking, you're just like,
Yeah, that would be painful.
so yeah.
No, he's a funny character, even just the scene where he first shows up.
Yeah, no, he's funny.
Just, yeah.
He's
Are you-
funny.
Are you
Why-
FBI? Nope, not at the
Yeah.
end.
Why did they,
Not
from just
bring
a
him.
completely logistics perspective, would have been really nice to have him around. He could have stopped so
I'm
many
kind of surprised
problems.
they didn't keep him in the movie. It was actually surprising me when they're like, all right, go home now, kid. And I was like, really?
Yeah.
But, I mean,
Well, and he also, like, single-handedly keeps that franchise alive, although it might be dead now. I haven't seen Dark Phoenix, and the reason I haven't seen Dark Phoenix is because I saw X-Men Apocalypse. Why would I watch Dark Phoenix after that garbage fire of a movie? You haven't
we're
seen
going
that.
to eventually.
Yeah.
But,
anyway,
yeah.
my point is... Okay.
Yeah, I gave it a 3.
Yeah,
I
2.5.
seem to remember enjoying it while I was watching it. Although again, I don't remember any of it, so it seems like a 3 is pretty
2.5 is probably good here.
good. Yeah.
Every day till eternity passes away, just to spend them with you. If I could make days last forever, if words could make wishes come true, I'd save every day like a treasure, and then again I would spend them with you. But
Cinematically, this movie was okay. It was fine. Here's the thing: there were some scenes where I was like, "When did this come out?"
Mm.
And then I was like, "Nah, they knew how to do things by this point, so I don't know why this looks so garbage." And one of those scenes is when Magneto's infusing the what are those called? Sentinel.
Probably.
He's infusing the Sentinel with metal, and like really cool idea, you know. And they have the metal like splitting off into like strings and then like getting in there. But then once they finally got in there, it was just so obviously computer generated, and it looked like it was borderline animated. I have seen more convincing animation on the Disney Channel.
It's really impressive.
Yeah, or Nickelodeon.
Mm.
Jimmy Neutron looked better in that scene, all right? And I think we can all agree that while that was an absolute treasure, the animation of that was just hard to watch, you know? So my point is, if you're going to watch a movie, or if you're going to make a movie in the year of, what was it, 2014?
2014.
You gots to make it watchable.
Mm-hmm.
And that scene just definitely wasn't. Now, I am nitpicking. There was nothing wildly offensive. I don't think. But it just wasn't up to standard for that time period. And I don't remember a single note from the score.
No, I never remember anything from the score. This is the other issue I've always had with the X-Men movies. Even though I really enjoyed the original trilogy, even in those movies...
Well, the first two.
No, 2 and 3, actually.
You liked The Last Stand?
I did like The Last Stand.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
Anyway, continue.
I've always felt like cinematically they didn't do anything to make themselves all that impressive.
No,
Not that they're offensive for the most part, although I do remember
Unoffensive.
thinking that the script in the first one was really terrible. But we're gonna ignore that.
Yeah, low budget.
I think that they hold their own. They make it good enough for what they're doing, but it's just not cinematically all that like groundbreaking or appeasing anyway. I think I gave it like a 3.5 on this one. I think it's good, and I didn't like. The metal stuff looked a little dated, but
well, I mean, like I said, it's not offensive. I gave it a 3. It's not that it's like really bad.
No, and I'd say it's above average, probably. I don't know, maybe. I don't. I don't even know, to be honest.
It's just that that was 8 years ago.
Yeah, it's hard to
remember, and you have to compare it to all of the other movies made in that time. But what I will say is that when you take it next to a movie that was made significantly earlier, like Iron Man, Iron Man looks a lot better.
Iron Man does look a lot better, yeah.
I will also say a lot of this movie, it seems like they just turned the grayscale up in order to film at night instead of just filming at night. They're like, what if it was day, but we made it gray? Mm-hmm. So I don't.
Yeah, that's fair.
I feel like they've always done that. Like the first X-Men was just, they were like, what if we just desaturated everything?
Yeah, that was weird.
So anyway, it's not wildly offensive. It's just
fine.
Not great.
There's nothing really to say about it.
That's a 3.
That's a 3.5 for whatever reason. On an entertainment scale, I think this movie is entertaining to watch once, which is as many times as I've seen it. But as I was watching it, even though I was like invested enough to want to know what was going to happen and all of that, I was thinking to myself, this would be a hard one to rewatch, even just the first time through.
Yeah. And
also, it felt too long. And we already mentioned that in the story, but I'm just going to say it again. I don't know how long this movie was. I'm not going to look it up. But it was too long. And it was too, I don't know, maybe it was just too slow or whatever it was. I wasn't bored, but I know if I watched it again, I would be.
Yeah.
And so, for that reason, it's hard, when you've only seen a movie once, it's hard to know how to rank it. Mm-hmm. Because when you go back and watch it again, you're always going to find more about it that you either dislike or like or whatever. I think in this case, I'll probably find more that I dislike than I currently do. I give it a 3.5 because it seemed like a pretty good middle ground for an entertainment scale. Having only seen it once, I was entertained, but I'm predicting my future self, if I ever watched it again, would not be as entertained.
Yeah, I've seen this movie a lot. When I was a teenager, I thought that this movie was like one of the greatest movies I'd ever seen.
Yeah, so you're one of those people that told me that.
Right, yeah. And I think that this is a movie that's much easier to swallow as a teenager, as a young person.
Probably.
And as somebody who's still very young, but not as young,
and there's been a lot more movies have come since then.
Yeah,
that are better.
A lot of movies have come since then that are just a lot better.
Yeah,
and it was fun. It was like a fun little experiment, but now it's just not the same. And frankly, I just didn't like it that much. Mm-hmm. And I don't think that's not to say that it's a bad movie or that you have a bad opinion because you like it. It's not The Amazing Spider-Man 2. I don't know. I was a little bored through a good portion of it. Mm-hmm. And I think that it definitely goes on a little too long, but there's nothing to cut. So I gave it a 2.5. It's not that I would judge you for not seeing it. And if you haven't seen it, knock yourself out.
It's worth seeing, I think. I mean, if you're an X-Men fan especially, I think this is a good one.
Yeah, I think if you're an X-Men fan, you're probably going to like this movie.
Yeah, I liked this one better than the last couple X-Men movies that have come out, to be honest, or at least that have come out to that point. Like, I liked it better than First Class, for sure, and X-Men Origins, for sure.
Definitely. I didn't like it as much as Wolverine, and I didn't like it more than X2.
No, X2 is probably my favorite.
I would say it probably goes... I don't know if Wolverine or X2 beat each other out, but in my ranking of the X-Men movies up to this point, it would probably be Wolverine or X2.
And then the other one, whichever one didn't take number one.
Right, and then this one.
Yeah, I think that's fair, although I didn't like the Wolverine as much as you did, but I would say X2 is...
Well, that's because you have a bad opinion. Listen.
Look, the point I'm trying to make here is it's worth seeing once. I think you'll enjoy it enough the first time. I don't think it has aged particularly well, and this is somebody who's only seen it once, but I think if you go back, if you're one of those people that was like, this is one of my favorite movies, go back and rewatch it and try not to let the nostalgia cloud it, because I know that that's hard to do. Like for
Especially with you Superman fans. What's with these negative comments about our opinion on the first Superman movie? Have you seen that movie recently?
I know.
That movie's not
I know.
good.
So here's the thing, and to be fair, the Avengers, the original Avengers, I loved it a lot when it came out. And so my nostalgia for that movie will probably always hold it to a pretty high standard. So I get it. I do. I get it. But try to not let that bog you down. Try to watch it with a very objective view. And my guess is you won't hate it because it's not really hateable. But you're not going to like it as much as you probably did when you first saw it.
If you consider this in your top 3 movies of all time, I'm going to question how many movies you've seen because there are some good movies out there. Have you ever heard of The Shawshank Redemption?
Yeah.
It's a good movie.
Yeah.
It's a good movie. This movie's fine. If
It's
you
fine.
like it, you're okay. I gave it a 3.2, I believe. I'm not going to do that math again. I did it once, and I'm not going to do it again. I think it was a 3.2 at all in all, and I believe you gave it...
I give it a 3.7, so I give it significantly higher than you.
Yeah, well, at the end of the day, it still equals out to a 3.4.5.
Which is pretty... It's fine. It's a pretty good score for it.
Oh, I just said 3.4.5. It's a 3.45.
It's so mediocre. There's 2 decimals in there.
Yeah. It's an okay movie.
It's okay. It's fine. It's fine.
Look, the only movie you're not allowed to like is The Amazing Spider-Man 2. And there's an argument to be made for Hulk 2003.
Ooh,
and there's also an argument to be made for Fan 4 Stick, which you have never seen.
But I will.
Speaking of which, tune in next week when we watch Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yeah, that one's a lot better. So, anyway, thank you guys so much for watching. That was our take on X-Men Days of Future Past. We'll see you next time with 2014's Guardians of the Galaxy.
A world of endless possibilities and infinite outcomes.
Kidding me? Oh, he's alive.
Countless choices define our fate. Each choice, each moment, a ripple in the river of time.
What do you want us to do with them, Major Stryker?
Enough ripples, and you change the tide.
I'll take him from here.
For the future is never truly set.